War Plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
To summarize maybe the woke mind virus, it consists of creating very, very divisive identity politics. So it actually amplifies racism, amplifies, frankly, sexism, and all the isms. And while claiming to do the opposite, it actually divides people and makes them sort of hate each other, and it makes people hate themselves. And it's also anti-meritocratic. It's not merit-based. So you want to have people succeed based on how hard they work and the talents, not who they are, whether they're man, woman, what race or gender. It's an artificial, mental civil war that is created, and it's not. And let me tell you, it's no fun. Okay, it is like. Woke mind virus and fun are incompatible. There's no fun in that. No joy. Woke mind virus is all about condemning people instead of celebrating people. Like when in the woke, it just doesn't celebrate. It's all about condemning and being divisive and being I think it's just evil, frankly.
Treating the woke mind viruses. Welcome to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube. Our X Spaces simulcast is here. Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV now, and Roku. Well, something's very wrong with our world. What I'm about to read to you is from today's book discussion. Something is very wrong with our world. Drag King story hours, trans child genital mutilation, soaring inflation, biolab released pandemics, experimental drugs forced on the public, toxic food, a national health crisis, endless wars, open borders, rising crime, election manipulation, the infringing of rights, and relentless lies from the media and the government. That's right, folks. Something is wrong, and it's being coordinated. This dangerous conflict is reaching a boiling point in the West. And now that Donald Trump is president again, the war to end this craziness is all out. Author T.S. Dixon is my guest today to discuss the mind viruses afflicting America. Those words I started my monologue with were his from his new book. He's an American husband, a father, a businessman living in Southwest Florida. And after witnessing this weaponization of government and the justice system against Trump and the conservative movement, Dixon decided he had to do more to get involved. And he released this debut book, The Woke Mind Viruses: Wokeism, Liberalism, Leftism, Globalism. The mind plagues destroying Western civilization and how to stop them, just this year. Well, T.S., welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Rob, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I love the book. I didn't get a chance to read all of it, but man, the pieces that I read, I'm like, why don't I know about this book? Because you're on the target. Thank you. I have to ask you the standard question, though. Yes. Why did you decide to write this?
Well, I've been politically active for 20 years as a conservative, and I'm an avid researcher. I've been researching for over 2 decades, and I had a pulse on this story, and I didn't see anyone putting it out anywhere. And actually, when I'd see big interviews with big, well-known people, they were asking questions about why. They were confused. Why are these groups doing the things they're doing? It doesn't seem to make any logical sense. And I just was screaming at the television or at the phone, it's ideological. It's ideological. We have to understand the ideology. But what pushed me over the edge was seeing the weaponization of government against Trump's candidacy in the 24 election. And then my wife became pregnant with our first child, and that really pushed me over the edge. I said, I've got to get involved. I've got to do more. I've got to get this story out because I need to empower and equip our movement so that we know who we're up against and how to fight them and how to win.
Exactly. Who we're up against, how to fight them, and how to win. That's what I like about the book. And I like where you started with ideology, because we're in an all-out ideological war, aren't we?
We are. Absolutely. In our time period, ideology is everything. And most people don't really understand what an ideology is. You don't often hear it articulated. And so I try to give my definition in the book that it's a set of ideas, a collection of beliefs that creates a view of the world and declares a mission. And most ideologies are fine, like constitutionalism or capitalism, Christianity, Judaism. These are great ideologies that have helped build the West. But there's also the other dark side of ideology where you have evil ideologies that want tyrannical power, want to take over at any cost, might makes right, brutality, like communism, like Nazism, fascism. These are terrible ideologies that are more like societal sicknesses or illnesses or cancers on nations that lead to a high body count. And so that's, what the book is about. There's 4 such dangerous illnesses that we're battling with now in our era. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to expose them so that we could be cured of them.
Yeah, exactly. And when you started out, you laid out an anecdote about a charismatic leader, and it's Alexander the Great. But what I want people to understand is that we just said that we're in an ideological war. But that story you tell about Alexander the Great and Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and the Hellenic ideology really is about the ideology of democracies and republics, isn't it?
It is. The thinking behind our modern systems of government go all the way back to that time period. And what I'm doing there is showing just how just look, the entire modern world is structured and based on just a few ideas from some toga-wearing, archaic, ancient Greek philosophers from roughly 2,300 years ago. Just think about how powerful those ideas are because they were true. And we exemplify them today because of that. Now, what I'm doing there in the beginning of the book is I'm giving people a pattern for how ideologies sweep into a nation and change society. So you have usually 4 people. You have usually 2 or 3 intellectual fathers that come up with the ideas and write them in books. And then there's always this 4th character, this charismatic leader. I call them the spiritual father of the ideology. And they're the one that come into power, bring the ideology and mass popularize it across the country. And so in the ancient world, Alexander the Great is a perfect example. His teacher was Aristotle, whose teacher was Plato, and above him was Socrates. They came up with the ideas, wrote them in books, and then Alexander swept across the ancient world and brought their ideas to the entire ancient world, including Judea, and they had their language of the Greek language. And so that's why even the New Testament was written in Greek and not Hebrew, because of Alexander and this movement. That's the power of ideology.
Yeah. I mean, even the story of Jesus Christ, the ideology that was built in the Old Testament on the prophecies and then came to fruition through him. You don't even have to have a charismatic leader be walking the earth anymore. He's living, but not walking the earth. And then here we are over 2,000 years later. And that Christian ideology is prevalent, prolific, and being talked about every moment of every day. It's amazing how that works.
Yes.
We keep referring to these, and you titled your book it the mind viruses. We refer to it like it's an illness that spreads rapidly. Why do we do that? Why is society characterizing that way? Because it's not. I mean, Elon Musk wasn't the first one to do it. You aren't. I'm not. Why is it that we do that?
Well, Gad Saad wrote a book, The Parasitic Mind, and he was talking about how ideologies can behave similar to a virus or like a fungus or an infection. And then Elon picked up on that, and I think he might have coined the term woke mind virus, and it just stuck because it's just such a bullseye statement and the nickname for what we're up against. But viruses are emblematic of sickness, right? There's lots of types of sicknesses, but we really relate. We understand viruses, the cold, the flu, COVID, and what have you. And so they infect the host and they spread disease, and they can even kill people if they're in a weakened state. And so dark ideologies behave almost exactly like a virus. They infect the mind of the consciousness of a group of people or a nation, and they keep going, working to destroy the host and bring about a revolution with a huge body count. And so we fight off and have medicine to fight off diseases because they're lethal. And we should do the same thing politically because these ideologies are even more lethal and have a massive body count. So in a way, it's a perfect metaphor that they are like a virus.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed that you've done, and I think you're unique in this, is you lay out stages of the virus, almost like stages of cancer. And I think you refer to cancer, the cancer of liberalism, I think, later in the book. But so as a society, I wanted to get your take on this for the audience. We are in this war. We have this mind virus, these multiple mind viruses, the four you lay out, which I totally agree with. I think it's brilliant how you laid that out. But where is our society right now? What stage are we in? And what are those stages?
Well, we are in stage 2, which is destabilization, and leading to stage 3, which is crisis. And so basically it starts off with something called demoralization. That's stage 1. That's where they infect the school systems, the media, the arts, the culture, the government. And demoralization has 2 effects. One, it seeks to completely indoctrinate those that it's seeking to brainwash and create as followers and a power base and radicalize them. And so that's why when you talk to liberals, you talk to people that have bought into the woke nonsense, it doesn't matter how many facts you bring, anything, because they're so thoroughly indoctrinated, it's become like a religion to them, and they'll just get emotional and upset and even angry or violent if you confront them too vigorously with facts. And we see that all the time on YouTube and whatnot. And then the other group, those that oppose the revolution, the demoralization is meant to just get them to be lazy, give up, inactive, or just give up hope that anything could be done, like feel like everything's hopeless, like many felt before Trump was reelected. During the Biden era, a lot of people, I think, felt hopeless, like nothing could be done. And then in stage 2, destabilization, we're seeing that now with where they had the open borders, the massive crime. You want to have financial turbulence. You want things to get really expensive. You want high taxes, and you just want to soak the middle class forever and steal everything they've got, and just start to destabilize everything. That's why they facilitated terror attacks, you name it. I mean, more and more wars, anything to destabilize the foundations of these Western countries. And then finally, it comes to what's a crisis event. And the crisis event can be an invasion. It can be a nuclear explosion. It could be a sudden financial collapse. It could be a mass assassination of a government that's in power. They can down a plane full of the whole government, the leading government officials. There's many ways that they can do the crisis. And then at that point, that's when they come in with to fill the power vacuum and hopefully have military backing so that they can effectively run their revolution, like we've saw in Cuba, China, Russia, Venezuela, many countries throughout the last 100 years.
Yeah, and it's been going on in this country, this ideological war for over 120 years, really, probably longer than that in my mind. In the next segment, I want to get into how we can recognize that in its cradle, in general sense, so other countries can watch out for it. But then you're going to see, I think, in the opening video of the next segment, it's what this liberalism as a disease kind of looks like. We'll be right back with T.S. Dixon. We're talking about his book, The Woke Mind Viruses.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
I agree with Elon Musk. I believe that liberalism is a mental disease. Now, I get why Democratic politicians and liberal organizations are pushing back on Doge. I understand. It's their foot soldiers, the keyboard warriors, the protesters, the agitators. They're the ones that I'm concerned about. They're not okay. They are lacking serious purpose in their life. And that is why they latch on to all of these different causes du jour. 6 months ago, they wanted to outlaw gas-powered cars and gas stoves. We had to be all electric. We had to save the environment. And now they're burning them down using fossil fuels. That's why they're professional students and they stay in school and incur all of this debt. They're terrified of going out and creating something. It's a safe space, honestly. But they come out and do you know how many death threats I have gotten from liberals simply because they disagree with my ideology? That's not normal. It's not normal to want to tell people to either harm themselves or to threaten them. It wouldn't even cross my mind to do that. I don't know if it's environmental. I don't know if it's consumption of additives or what they're putting in the food, or perhaps maybe even medications that they're taking that's supposed to help mental illness that's making it worse. But there's something going on.
Experts say that Russian hackers found a way to hack our utilities, and the hackers may still be in there waiting.
Talking Truth Thursday today with T.S. Dixon, author of this great new book called The Woke Mind Viruses. And this is a fantastic book, folks. You can find it on Amazon. And I highly recommend you go get it because it's the only really book that's brought in the history of these woke mind viruses. And there's 4 of them laid out in the book: wokeism, liberalism, leftism, and globalism. And we're going to touch on each one of those. And what you just heard right there is a pretty good description of the liberalism woke mind virus. And T.S. Dixon is my guest today. And T.S., it really is a disease. And to listen to her talk about the reactions of these liberals, it's interesting because the symptom in those particular circumstances are the people protesting, the keyboard warriors that she talked about. Those are the symptoms. But like a virus, which feeds on certain things in the body, like some viruses like things like sugar, and it allows them to expand and grow in the body and become more and more deadly and those kind of things. The Doge effort has found the food, and that is the illegal funding through these non-government organizations and from U.S. agencies like USAID. That's just one. The USAID scandal, the first one that Musk uncovered. And that's why the left is going nuts over it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, you see, on the left, it's a coalition of these 4 groups. So they each have their own ideology, but they work together as like an army, like a military with a command. And the commanders are the globalists. And they're the ones that have set up all of the pay schemes and scams to siphon tax money out of the American public and then redirect it into financing the woke agenda and the globalist agenda. And so that's the brilliant thing about Elon and Trump is they're identifying it, uncovering it, and then cutting it off, defunding them. And so then what the globalists do is they activate their foot soldiers to go on the attack. And so a lot of the behavior you're seeing where it's coordinated, where they're burning down sites and they have these web pages with Molotov cocktail clickers where you can see where the Tesla owners live or the dealerships are. This is all funded and paid for by the globalist agenda. They use the woke army, the woke radicals, as their foot soldiers, as that TikTok commentator was saying. What a perfect video for this. She is really nailing it. Well said.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought on the question I wanted to ask you. But when we see government instruments as part of this construction, U.S. government instruments, it reminds me that you write about in your book some historical examples of the dark pieces of this and what can happen. Just give us one historical example about how these woke mind viruses out of control go awry, and the end state of that is really horrendous for humankind.
Well, yeah, I mean, this kind of a virus erupted in France in the early 1800s with the French Revolution and the Jacobins, and they were decapitated. Once they take power, then the real violence starts and the real murder, open murder begins. And so all these death threats that they're making now, they make good on them. And they were chopping people's heads off in the town square and in front of churches with guillotines. That's where the guillotine comes from as a symbol. Same thing with the Bolsheviks in Russia in 1917, where they came in and swept in with their revolution, and then the bloodletting began. And they had radical beliefs. I mean, a lot of transsexualism, transgenderism, godlessness, Satanism, all sorts of things happen within these groups and is common. The beautiful thing is, in America and Western countries, we've been able to fend off these earlier prototype versions of this virus. But now this one, it's like woke has been gain of function created and engineered in a lab somewhere, which was Frankfurt, Germany, to attack and effectively destroy the West. And so that's what we're up against. We had a literal virus, and now we're up against the gain of function mind virus.
Yeah, and to watch it, the way the United States government is organized, and our state governments to a degree too, as democratic republics, with these this bureaucracy, and this is why I say this has been going on for at least 125 years, might even go back to the 1850s, 60s in this country, is that the bureaucracy, the unelected bureaucracy piece of the federal government especially, has grown extremely powerful. And it's these woke mind viruses that have enabled that over over a century-long period of time, isn't it?
It is. So the origins, the point of, so what I try to do in the book is go back to the point of origin and go to exactly where it comes from, who it came from, and what their goals and beliefs are. And our movement started in 1776, and it was preceded by the Great Awakening, Christian revival, and then the European Enlightenment, which was the quest for truth, created the sciences, modern education, led to the Industrial Revolution, the modern world. And so everything that we enjoy today came out of that movement. And that's what drives our belief system, which is that there is a creator, that this creator grants us inalienable rights, that truth exists, that the role of government is a limited role, and that we should be able to have free market capitalism. And so that's the fundamental beliefs of our system. That's what we exist to defend and protect for our generation and the next generation. But there was a counter movement to that in the 1800s with the Jacobins and whatnot, but it became an ideology under three men, the intellectual fathers. Darwin, who said there is no God because, we all came out of the ooze and evolved over 100 million years. Nietzsche, who followed him up, that said if there is no God, then there's no afterlife, no morality, no right and wrong, and everything's meaningless, so that all there is will to power. That's all there is, the pursuit of power. And then you were followed up by Marx, who said if that's all true, here's a 10-step program to achieve and fulfill Nietzsche's will to power. It's called the Communist Manifesto, the 10 planks of communism. And that became the birth of the left. And then from that trunk of that tree comes modern leftism, which are socialists and communists, liberals, which is Marxism adapted for an American audience. You have the woke mind virus, woke, which comes out of 1930s Frankfurt, Germany, which is what they call cultural Marxism, where you attack the culture and divide people culturally, like Elon was talking about in that clip, versus not rich versus poor, but black versus white, man versus woman, gays versus straights, transgenders versus males and females, those trying to protect the earth from everybody destroying the earth. And so that's a theory called critical theory that they developed to attack the West and bring in revolution. And then the final one is globalism. And globalism is the least spoken about, least understood, because they're the money power, the financial interest. And they're trying to create a federation of countries under one giant global government, sort of like the 50 states are under the federal government, or the European countries are under the EU Commission. They want one body that all the nations of the world are underneath. Global government. Marxist government. Yep.
You think the United Nations organization is the core of that idea, that they're trying to use that as the instrument to bring that to fruition?
Yes. So this ideology was founded by Cecil Rhodes, who created the De Beers Company in South Africa in the 1880s and 90s. And he was followed up by a guy named Lord Milner, who was then followed up by John D. Rockefeller Jr., who took over the movement. And their goal was to establish a structure and then utilize the power of the United States merged with the UK's in an alliance to eventually bring this about. And so they had stages. They had the first stage where they brought in the Federal Reserve Bank and whatnot, and they had the Bank of England already. And then phase two was after World War II at Bretton Woods, where they brought in the second stage, where they set up the UN, they set up the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the World Corporation, the World Court, and World Bank, the IMF, all that stuff. And so that is the proto-globalist shadow government. And then the idea was that when the technology was finally ready to go, which you need like massive AI and things, they watched Napoleon try to conquer the world, failed. Hitler tried to conquer the world, failed. So they realized the thing that those guys lacked, that the reason they failed, they didn't have the right technology. And so they set up this interim world government to prep the world, prep the nations, and draw us in slowly through a long march through our institutions, and then eventually collapse this iteration to bring in the final version, their fully realized world government. And that's what they were trying to do in our time.
Yeah, and that's been disrupted a little bit, hasn't it? The pandemic actually, which I believe was one of their operations, looking back now at all the evidence.
Absolutely.
And they're aided and abetted by the bureaucratic establishment that's opposed to America First policy, because they're pro-globalist policy, which is the liberal, what do we call it? The phrase is the rules-based
international order.
International order that the United States and the West created post-World War II. So that crowd is on that side of this thing, and we've disrupted it because we saw what happened in the pandemic. Now, Donald Trump is saying, I'm defunding the WHO. Up until a few minutes ago, he was sending Elise Stefanik, who is a warrior. No matter what you say about her voting in Congress or whatever, she is an American warrior. And I believe that she was going to go rip out the guts of the United Nations to the max extent possible, at a minimum. But he's withdrawn her nomination a few minutes before our show started. And I don't know who he's going to name for that. And we think primarily, and he said it on Truth, primarily because it's so tight in Congress. And he's seeing the globalists pop out. You know, this Signal Gate thing with Hegseth, it's an operation. There's no doubt about it. It mirrors the operations that they played against Donald Trump from the time he came down the escalator, when they went after him with the FISA system. They went after General Flynn, the Russia hoax, the suckers and losers hoax. Matter of fact, Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic is the same actor. I call him an actor in the media that pull off all the rest of those. So that's one of their operations. And it's because Donald Trump's able to do these things now, like, well, I'm just going to defund the WHO. And the latest news on that is that they're going to run out of money and have to stand down their operations if something's not done. But that is the fight stage that has been set. And we got to take another break, TS. When we come back, we'll talk more about that. And we'll hear from J.D. Vance about why leftism is a religion. And I want to dive into that a little bit, because this whole religion connection to Marxism and an atheistic ideologies like it is kind of puzzling and interesting to pull apart. We'll be right back with T.S. Dixon, author of The Woke Mind Viruses. You got to go get that book.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
Well, you know these signs that are in super woke neighborhoods. I'm sure there's plenty of them in Austin. Like, in this house, we believe science is real. No person is legal. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know your religious background, but like I'm a convert to Catholicism. It's like, was raised Christian, became an atheist, came back to Christianity, got baptized Catholic like 5 or 6 years ago. And what is so interesting about this in this house we believe is it's so similar to the creed that you declare every day at a Catholic Mass, right? We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. And there's almost a similar cadence between the Christian creed and what these guys are doing with this hyper woke stuff.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and it's Truth Thursday, and we're telling the truth. We're telling the truth about the woke mind viruses. That's the name of the book we're discussing today with the author, T.S. Dixon. T.S., before we went to the break, we dove into globalism a little bit. But one of the interesting things to me about leftism and the liberals in America, which really are masked Marxists, in my opinion, and socialists.
Yes, that's what they are.
Is this modeling of Christianity? I mean, I think I'll take it one step further. Modeling of Christianity and our philosophies. He's talked about the Catholic Creed and those kind of things, but you can find elements of that everywhere in this country. And the American Marxists have modeled that. It's supposed to be an atheistic based ideology, but really they make it a religion, don't they?
Well, yeah, I have an entire section of my book about how it is a religion. Marx was not necessarily a political philosopher, but he was an atheistic theologian. And his goal was not to create a new form of government necessarily, but to create a new religion that could save people through changing their human nature. And so that was what he was fascinated with through the tool of communism and socialism. And so what we have today, he taught that the Marxist leaders to teach the people that they could save themselves through good political works instead of good religious works. And so that's the core of Marxism that a lot of people, they're picking up on, but they don't fully understand. And it's much like any religion based on works. Similar to Islam, they have to pray 5 times a day. They have to go on a Hajj to Mecca. They have to bow towards the east, and they have to fast during Ramadan in order to do the good works to make it into paradise. Now, Marxism is just like that. But they have basically 5 major tenets. Social justice, which is like mainly rich versus poor, bringing in socialism for the sake of saving the poor. They have radical feminism, which is where they want to save women from the patriarchy. They have LGBTism, where they want to save children from heterosexuality and from gender normativity, which they believe are social constructs forced on them by their families, their churches, and their society. And they want to save these children from the threat of heterosexuality and gender normativity of being a male or female. They have climate alarmism, where they want to save the earth from carbon dioxide, which is a life-giving molecule. Go figure. And then they have critical race theory and racialism, where they want to save minority groups, save blacks, save immigrant groups from majority groups like whites in the West. And so by doing these things and by supporting these causes, they feel like they are atoning for their sin, making up for their misdeeds in life, and that they are cleansed and washed in the water of their Marxist works, and they are a righteous person. That's why they get this self-righteousness and this moral superiority complex and talk down to others and act so arrogant, and then they virtue signal to each other to let each other know, let us know, hey, I did this. Oh, I know the right things. I know the right phrases. It's like reciting a catechism or reciting their prayers to Mecca. And so that's what they do. And when, instead of wearing a cross, they wear the rainbow flag. That's their symbol. And so, yeah, it is a religion. Absolutely. It was intended to be a religion. That's why it's been so powerful and effective for so many years.
And that's why you mentioned the rainbow flag. That's why you can tell the level of of the infection in our own government, especially at the federal level. I'm a VA patient, a Veterans Affairs Administration, a service-connected disabled veteran, and I go to the local hospital down here, and they usually have 4 American flags all lined up together at the main entrance there. While during Pride Month, they put a rainbow flag up. That's the United States federal government putting a symbol of hate from a Christian, but they put a symbol of hate on a flagpole and elevated it to the same level as the Stars and Stripes. That really is religious, isn't it?
It might as well be a biohazard flag or, a white flag of surrender that, hey, this has been conquered and marked and taken by the globalists, this organization.
Yeah, that flag kept disappearing. I don't know what veterans were taking it down. It kept disappearing. I was hoping that maybe one of them would have a Christian flag, the white flag with the blue Union and the red cross.
Oh, yeah.
They would raise in its place, but that never happened. Although I think it's going away now, and the leftists in the government and liberals in the that are embedded in the government still are just going crazy because their religious symbol is no longer allowed to be flown in the faces of people like me and you. Very interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what makes them righteous and holy and elevated with their social consciousness above us unwashed Neanderthals that believe in the Bible and believe in the Constitution and guns and heterosexuality and all of these social constructs and archaic nonsense like creationism or God or the notion of truth, that there's true things and false things in the world.
Or the facts of genetics, right? X and Y chromosomes.
Right, chromosomes.
There are certain facts you don't have to believe what I believe, that God created men and women, which is what it says in the Bible. You don't have to believe that, but you have to go with the science, don't you? Oh, wait a minute. No, you don't. And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you is, if this is a religion, my religion has a heaven, the Muslim religion has paradise. What's the heaven for the Marxists and the atheists and all those folks that are pushing this religion?
So they don't have a spiritual heaven for their soul because they don't believe in the soul. They're secular Darwinists. So their heaven is to bring about revolution on the earth. So if they can bring about a revolution in their country, that is their best chance of getting to heaven, is bringing about a revolution like that in Cuba, China, Russia, Venezuela, Vietnam, North Korea. That's heaven. And then what's interesting is, though, they do have a kingdom. In Christianity, there's a kingdom. There's going to be a second coming of Christ, and he's going to rule for 1,000 years and set up a kingdom. Now, they have this. This is called the end of history. It comes from Marx's professor from Germany, Hegel, and he foretold this end of history when we get to this sort of nirvana-like end of human civilization. And now the technocrats say that that's going to be when we hit the singularity with AI, and they transcend and are, merged with computer systems and whatnot, AI and robotics. So that's their version of the kingdom. But the globalists see the end of history as when they fully rule and become gods themselves. And so they're trying to attain immortality through science, through longevity science and biohacking and even eventually maybe merging and using technology in their body, nanobots, different things to cure the disease of aging. And so they're trying to achieve eternal life through that vector, through technology, versus what Christians do is through Jesus Christ, through the blood of Jesus, and so the salvation experience.
Yeah. How do they get past the contradictions? And the last segment of this show is partially about that, but I want to get into that a little bit. I was reviewing videos for possible use on the show today and last night, and this one was of a little boy. It's a British demonstration or protest. And it's a little boy. He's probably 8 or 9 years old. His freaky mom is there with her rainbow hair and piercings and tattoos and all that. No offense to anybody like that, but she was freaky left-wise. And he's holding a cardboard sign that says F-U-C-K, the Nazis. And she's railing about the Nazis, and the little kid is railing about the Nazis. And the reporter with the video is trying to ask him a question of, well, you seem to be contradicting, because the lady goes, we're opposed to hate. Aren't you opposed to hate? You have to hate Nazis to be opposed to hate. And the reporter's trying to ask her, well, isn't that contradictory? Aren't you advocating for intolerance and hate and violence against a certain group of people because you disagree with them? And the little boy just went ballistic and started verbalizing what was on his little sign there. And that's one of the things I think that puzzles Americans, us normies, that are on Americanism. That's what we want, is the stuff that comes out of the Declaration and the Constitution and everything, and freedom. It's just puzzling because they seem to live a life of contradiction at every stage.
Yeah. Well, this behavior is also easily observed in cults, right? So the cult leader has their ulterior motive, their ultimate agenda, but that's not the message they give to the cult members and the converts, right? They're just teaching the dogma and the prophecies and the religion to the cult members. And they're letting them know this is the absolute truth. You're the inside group. Everyone else is going to hell, but you guys are the chosen ones. And I'm your leader. I've got the link to the truth. And just listen to everything I say. That's cult-like thinking. And so that's the only way it works with Marxism and leftism and liberals woke, is these people have joined in, and these teachers, these philosophers of old, and then the modern leadership, these are their leaders. These guys all have ulterior motives, right? They're trying to fulfill will to power. There's no contradiction with them. They don't actually believe in feminism. They don't believe in helping racial minorities. That's all lies. They don't believe in climate change. They buy mansions on the beach. They fly around in jets to their climate change summits. And I just read they're stripping out and tearing down rainforest for their upcoming one in South America. So they don't really believe this stuff. But it's for the followers. It's for the converts. And cult members don't think beyond whatever's fed to them. Whatever's fed to them from their authority figure goes directly into their subconscious mind. That paints their reality. That's reality. Full stop. They don't think critically. They don't have a critical factor. They're not judging what's being taught to them. They're just accepting it. And so that's why they like to get people as young as possible indoctrinated into the cult through the education system or any other avenue, entertainment, the arts, and they're going after preschoolers, kindergarten, whatever, with the most extreme aspects of their ideology, even transgenderism for 5-year-olds, teaching fisting and homosexuality to these kids, trying to get them exposed to cartoon gay pornography in the school library. I mean, to us, this is really unthinkable. But to them, they've got to get converts as young as possible bought into the cult. And so that's why they can't see the protesters you're mentioning. They're not going to be able to see it. They're totally demoralized. Stage 1, demoralization, completely indoctrinated. They couldn't see the truth if you put it right in front of their face. They couldn't see it.
Yeah, and the truth is, like you just mentioned, this is all really about power. It's not about any kind of principle. And we'll continue this discussion after this break. And I want to get you, TS, to dive into what the cure is for this, because there is a way out of this. There is a cure for this stuff. And people need to know about it. And you need to go buy this book, by the way. I've got a hard copy on the way myself, and it's on Amazon, The Woke Mind Virus. It's by T.S. Dixon. We'll be right back on Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
In 1970, the Sydney Morning Herald reported that weather experts fear air pollution, if unchecked, will bring on a new ice age. In 1978, a documentary was made featuring Leonard Nimoy of Star Trek fame, who told viewers during the lifetime of our grandchildren, Arctic cold and perpetual snow could turn most of the inhabitable portions of the planet into a polar desert. In the late 90s and early 2000s, we were being told that humans had punched a hole in the ozone layer and the sun's ultraviolet rays were going to kill us all. Alarmist rhetoric about man-made climate change is nothing new. The United Nations and the media have been pushing it for decades, but over time the narrative has shifted from global cooling to global warming. And in fact, several months ago, Greta Thunberg deleted a tweet from 2018 which read, "A top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years." These prophecies of doom simply never come true. The polar bears are still here, the sea hasn't risen, the ozone layer is fine, but the point of this messaging is to make you afraid. And why? Because if a climate apocalypse is imminent, then governments of the world can centralise their power and control your actions with the so-called emergency. It's a Trojan horse for globalism led by the United Nations and their puppet masters and the Chinese Communist Party. This is not serving Australian interests. These entities are not serving Australian interests. They're trying to control us and they're trying to make us weak, but that is the real emergency.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube, and it's Truth Thursday, and we're talking with the author of the book, The Woke Mind Viruses, T.S. Dixon. And T.S., we were speaking on the last segment about this is about power. It's not about Marxism or even capitalism or socialism, liberalism, leftism. This whole effort is about power, and our Australian brother there was talking about the power of governments, and he kind of encapsulated it very well there at the end. That's controlled by the organizations like the United Nations Health Organization, but is greatly influenced, and he used the word controlled, by the Chinese Communist Party these days. And they do control Tedros and those kind of folks in the World Health Organization. I think that's why the pandemic operation was so successful, because of the influence and control of the Chinese Communist Party on the World Health Organization and the willingness of even the American government to believe what they were saying, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. China has a seat at the table with the globalists, for sure. They coordinate together, run operations together, and they factor into their global matrix and ultimate plan as the Eastern segment of the future world government. So, China eventually wants to rule all of Asia. That's why they have their eyes set on Japan and Taiwan and South Korea.
Yeah, and through their Belt and Road Initiative, they're co-opting developing countries all around the world. So they're extending reach dramatically, and eventually could exercise vaster amounts of controls than just the Pacific Rim. I mean, they're already in the Belt and Road Initiative in most of the island nations, all the way down to Australia. You look at a map, and I saw a map as I was prepping with China flags at every location where they had a Belt and Road Initiative on infrastructure in the Pacific, and I was like, holy cow, do our admirals understand what's going on? Because to deter these people, we have to be stronger than them. But if they're everywhere and they're stronger than us, deterrence isn't going to work, and that doesn't bode well for a peaceful world. And when you're talking about just pure power gains and an ideology like Marxism, clearly, obviously, communists are operating in that mode. That sets us up for
out in the open
catastrophe beyond even what we saw at the end of the Nazi regime, World War II, doesn't it?
It does. And if we remember that the globalists have had to play the long game and take on the strategy of the Fabian Socialist Group of gradualism or incrementalism, where they perform a long march through the institutions over more than 100 years, which they have successfully executed. The thing they lack that Napoleon didn't have, why he failed and Hitler failed, is the right technology. And so you need a whole high-tech control grid in order to completely control a society and control populist movements and dissenters and potential, the worst thing, populist leaders as they rise up and organize the people against the establishment, like Trump, like a J.D. Vance, like an Elon Musk. And so they have to be able to squash these people. Jack Ma is an excellent example of somebody that might have become a dangerous populist leader in China. And when he just said one thing out of line, semi-criticizing the communist leadership, he was disappeared for months and sent to a camp, and then they brought him back and put him back out on the street with a stern warning. And so once they have the control grid in place, they can just delete your bank account. No matter if you have billions, they can just erase your money. They can grab you at any time, throw you into a camp. You have no rights. And so the West and the globalists beta developed this in China. Have you ever wondered why we wanted to give them favored nation status when they had prison camps and no real elections? And we're not supposed to give that to countries, but we sent all our manufacturing over there and gave them these favorable trade deals and trade deficits, which is basically us pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into their economy every year. And then at the same time, having our state-of-the-art tech companies hand over the IP for advanced technology. Why would we do that? Well, only if there's an agenda, there's an objective. Well, what's the objective? They need money and they need technology so they can combine it together and then R&D and develop the societal high-tech control grid, which they have successfully done and rolled out. It is in place in China. They're beta testing it. And now they're packaging it up so they can franchise it for other smaller countries and eventually Western countries around the world. And if you listen to any of the globalist speeches the last 10 years, they all fantasize about how great China's system of government is. And if we could only have that here. And these are, CEOs, owners of giant top 10 companies, Fortune 100 companies, and global leaders of Western countries salivating over the Chinese control grid system that they want for us, including central bank currencies.
Yeah, it's the Chinese started with what's called a digital social credit system. You go to a vending machine, and if they've scored you down because you're a bad person, you've said something wrong, you can't even get a Coca-Cola out of a vending machine because of this social credit system. one of the add-ons to that was going to be the digital vaccine passport. I'm on the Stop Vaccine Passports Task Force that was set up by the Committee on Present Danger China during the pandemic because of that very reason. It was an attempt to bring the Chinese social credit system and everything that goes with it into Western countries like the United States, and Israel fully adopted something like that.
Yeah.
So
yes,
it's very dangerous. And now we have artificial intelligence added on to that. And look, I'm a programmer, old school programmer from back in the early 80s. I don't believe that artificial intelligence will ever be sentient. It's just a very well put together, high speed, high memory level, large capacity computer programs. So garbage in, garbage out still applies. And we can use it, but we have to use it as a tool, not to become some panacea and buy into this. Well, it's going to become sentient someday. Well, that's baloney. It's not. But how do we cure this? So, while at the same time, we're monitoring and fielding these new technologies that should be for the good of mankind. As we've come through history, that's what we've tried to do. Obviously, some of these technologies have been turned against humanity many times. So what's the cure for these woke mind viruses, I guess, is my big question. And then how can we handle or manage this AI rollout? Because it's happening. I don't think you can stop it.
No. I mean, we are in the midst of another huge industrial revolution and enlightenment period when it comes to the advancement of technology and philosophy and ideas and arts and all of these things. We're in an enlightenment period now. And so it's not going to be stopped. It shouldn't be stopped. Mankind is going to, transcend to the next level. And that's a good thing. But the globalists and the Marxists want to take these tools, these inventions, and use them for evil to finally implement their crisis and then their revolution and bring in their world government that they've been working so hard for generations. And that must be stopped. So what's the cure? Well, there's really two cures. The first one is three words, very simple: massive institutional reform. Massive institutional reform, comprehensive, where you come in, everyone gets educated, gets up to speed on, and learns what's going on, who we're up against, what to do. That's a big part of the book, is to fast track people so they can understand what we're up against and take action. The second part is reclamation, where we reclaim our institutions, our companies, our businesses, schools, churches, denominations, what have you, and our government. So when we won the 2024 election, that's not necessarily a revolution because we didn't get rid of the U.S. government. It's a reclamation where we're taking back the government that was ours in the first place. It had been stolen from us, and we're reclaiming it. The third phase we're in now, in the U.S. and other countries need to go through these steps all over the West. All of the 60-some Western countries need to go through this process, this pattern. The third part is reform, where the executive actions, the leaders are replaced, the management levels replaced, and then the reforms happen, and they chop government down to size. They defund globalism. They defund the corruption. And then that leads to the fourth phase, which is redress of grievances. That's where the Justice Department and the prosecutors go after all the crimes that have been exposed, investigate and prosecute. But I'll tell you this, a massive institutional reform will only do part of the battle. The other thing that has to happen is a spiritual awakening and a renewal of Christianity around the West, and the reform of the churches and the denominations into that new movement. That's the other part. Our culture, the core of our culture is our belief in God. That's the core of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and Western civilization. It's a Christian civilization, and we've gone secular, and that could be a good thing and a bad thing because you can lose superstition and bad traditions. But you have to return to the core beating heart of what drives your society and your civilization, and that is Christianity and the salvation experience that was made available on the cross. And so that other part, I don't know how that's going to happen, but that next part has to happen. It's happened every single time we've overcome a powerful establishment throughout our Western history.
Well, I think God has worked well so far. He's working with us. He's saved Donald Trump. Donald Trump believes that. Elon Musk, I think, is turning towards Christianity. J.D. Vance has, and they are supported by massive numbers of Christians. And you're absolutely right, TS. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can find his book at ts.com, on Amazon. Go get it. It's very important. It's the only one that pulls it all together. All right, so today's Truth Thursday. Monday is More Monday. My guest is our regular guest, Colonel John Mills. I've got to talk to him about what's going on in South Korea because we're not paying attention to it. And it's a lot of things happening. Most of it is not good. I'll see you then on The Rob Maness Show.